Yeah, let's pray. Our Father in God, thank you for this day and thank you for this moment that we've gathered here to listen to your servant speak to us on issues that pertain to our life here while we wait for your second coming. Kindly prepare our minds to receive and also to understand and also put in practice. I want to ask that may the Spirit be with the speaker and also be with us and also the audience in YouTube and also Facebook. We thank you for allowing us to meet and learn. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Thank you. You can take over now.
Thank you so much, Timothy. Appreciate the time, appreciate the invite. It's truly a great honor to be here with you again. And to be quite honest, I think the subject that I'm presenting on, or what I'm sharing, is some of the things that I really am passionate about. I'm passionate about it in my work. I deal with some of them, in my private life, at home, at church as well, because I think, the church is a good training ground for most of us, right? For us to be able to develop ourselves, and who better a teacher than God Himself, So these are things that I'm passionate about, and I'm just happy to be sharing on these. And I just want to maybe also, further extend myself even to Muscle as an organization, to say, I think if there's opportunities for us to find how we can collaborate, how we can share thoughts and ideas, I'm mostly comfortable and happy to engage as much as long as time and God allows us to. So today's session is just a follow up on last week's session. Maybe I'm going to maybe just ask for a bit of interaction as well at the end, just for you to share your thoughts, because I think this is an opportunity not only for you to learn and get some insights from as far as the presentation is concerned, but I think it's also an opportunity for me to learn and develop myself as well, based on the feedback and the thoughts that you'll be sharing in our discussion for today. So maybe just to kick it off, I think when Tony opened the session earlier, the song that was playing was Find Us Faithful by Steve Green. And he does the song, with the Gaither Vocal Band, or the Gaither Homecoming, one of those DVDs. And, I think, so I've known the song for a while, and some of the songs in that specific album, I mean, Dream On, done by Lionel Harris. And, some of those songs, I think when I was young and when I listened to them, when I'm still fairly young, but I think at the time when I listened to them, they really challenged my thinking and my attitude towards myself, attitude towards life, attitude towards church, to say, am I going to be impactful? Am I going to be able to add value in the different spaces where I am in? And I think even in the discussion today, I'm going to touch around some of the things that I experienced growing up as well, at least up to the point where I am now. And perhaps trying to sort of throw them back to you to say, we can sort of start thinking about these things in order to enable ourselves or empower ourselves to an extent, so that we can be impactful, right? And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to lift up my presentation, but I'm going to keep my video on, just so I don't feel alone. But if you would also want to keep your videos on, I'm comfortable, so I can see your faces while the presentation go, at least up to a point where we have challenges, with broadband and just connectivity. Let me put my presentation on mode. Timothy, can you confirm if you can see my presentation and if my presentation is on presenter mode?
We can see it, and I think it's on presenter mode.
Thank you so much, sir. All right. Okay, cool. So Timothy, if there's any questions or any comments in the chat, you are just going to note those ones for me, and then we'll see, maybe we can address some of them at the end, or I think let's make it we're a small group, so we can make it an interactive session. So if you have any thoughts or any comments that you want to share, I'm more than happy to receive your comment and your thoughts. Okay. All right, cool. Thank you so much. So, and just to confirm, I'm on presentation mode. Do you also see my video and all of the things on my screen. So I'm just trying to decide if I should minimize this or just leave one screen at least. Do you see the 4 faces, so to say?
No, we're just seeing the presentation.
Ah, great. Not a problem. Great. No, I'm comfortable with that. So thank you. I think the theme still continues from relevance to impact, and this is part 2, or maybe just the closing of that session. And what I'm going to do in today's session, I'll try to maybe use some practical examples or give you an example about what we experienced in South Africa at my local church, specifically last year when I also was the youth leader at my church. And I'll be able to share a bit of insights or things that we wanted to achieve. And what I've since done is when I shared some newsletters with Tony, and if you are interested, or maybe Tony, you can share them with your, the team that is around you, just to maybe sort of, so that it becomes sort of a beef up to the presentation this evening. But I think more importantly, it is also just to give you a bit of insights around some of the things that I'm going to be speaking about, to say, what did they mean practically? What did we do for us to be able to sort of, for me to qualify it as being impactful, or rather having the mindset of being impactful. So Tony, you will share those with us, but if you would want us maybe to share them further, you can just post your email address in the chat, and then we'll be able to maybe just forward them to you via email. But nonetheless, I think just reflecting on our conversation for last week. So last week we spoke about relevance and, the importance around relevance. And I mean, even in how we pitched it, we did not disqualify the importance of relevance. I think in our time, in our generation, it's important that we remain relevant. But I think relevance is not enough. We need to get to a point where we start questioning on whether or not in our relevance, are we being impactful or not? And, I was just playing around with, I was just thinking about this earlier, and I was trying to see what are some of the practical examples that we can use as far as relevance. And the simplest, or perhaps maybe the funniest that I thought about is, when you're looking for a partner, when you're looking for someone to marry, ask yourself, just that moment when you ask them out, do you want to be just relevant next to them, or you want to be impactful? And I can imagine, we want to be relevant in instances where we want to be recognized in our workspaces, or we want to just, become friends with people. But if you are going to want to get a partner, even how you speak, the language that you use, how you dress up, there's a lot of things that you start doing because you want to be a bit more impactful. Because with impact, the mindset is in the long term more than in the short term. And I want us to just move away from seeking relevance in our space, because I don't think it's enough for us to be just relevant in what we do. We need to start thinking further. What does it mean? Why am I here? And how can I have maximum impact so that I can add sizable value to other people? And just the 2 quick comments that I made there is relevance is a bit more reactive in nature, right? It's influenced by, and I think I shared on this last week, it's influenced mostly by what is around. So you have to first assess what is around you for you to then condition yourself to be acceptable in that space. But rather with impact forces you to be, one, proactive. Secondly, it forces you to be a bit more intentional, right? It forces you to think a bit further. And it forces you to think even in terms of whether or not my impact is going to be somewhat relevant in the future. Is it going to be still felt? Is it still going to be felt even in the future? And when you speak about impact, your mind already starts thinking about issues around legacy, right? To say, what is the legacy that I want to leave for myself? What's the legacy that we're supposed to leave as a church, as young people, as the youth? What is the legacy that we want to have? And relevance cannot qualify us for legacy, right? I mean, it's just what we did. But rather, if we are going to be intentional about the impact that we want to have, it starts to make us think hard about what's the legacy that we want to have. And I think the comments that came afterwards as well, even in our chat or in our presentation, were very impactful. And I thought it's important maybe to just cite some of those things. I mean, I think Panache shared something like, truth is what is relevant in our time. And Christ is the truth, or Christ is the only truth. So he's the only one who can be relevant, or who has to be relevant. But I think the problem comes when we ourselves want to be relevant when Christ is supposed to be relevant. Our duty or our responsibility, or where we're supposed to have influence, is around impact more than relevance. And by lifting up Christ, by showing the standards and the qualities that Christ wants us to live by, we then become impactful. So we are presenting the truth that is relevant, and in so doing, we become impactful. But I want us to see it in this way. If we are not intentional, especially around impact and how we build that culture or that mindset of impact, we're going to lose out on a lot. We're not going to be able to leave that legacy that we're looking for. And I think in the next couple of slides, well, in any case, I don't have many slides, but I'm going to maybe spend a bit more time talking. I'm going to speak about what we need to start doing then in practical terms, in a practical sense, for us to be able to have an impact, or somehow to develop that mindset of impact, right? So I thought, in order to maybe illustrate this a bit better, because I mean, even this week I had said I was going to use some practical examples. I'm going to share with you how, or rather what we did, or at least tried to accomplish last year at our local church with a number of youth. And then in sharing this, I'm hoping that you can pick some of the principles that I was trying to share, or at least the points that I was trying to make around the importance of impact over just being relevant, right? And maybe to start with, I put a theme there: enabled, engaged, and enterprised. And this was our motto. So we still had everything, right? As the youth, for the love of Christ constrains us. It challenges us, it makes us want to do. So it's the love of Christ that motivates us. And we had the youth song, everything was still in place. But because we wanted to be impactful more than just relevant, we said we need to start thinking differently in how we approach our initiatives and our activities at church is going to determine on whether or not we are just going to be another youth in a year, or we are going to be impactful, right? So we came together then with the team and we said, but guys, if we're going to be impactful, we need to start thinking like an organization, like a formal, like a proper organization. If we're going to be successful, we need to start thinking as though this is our actual work, right? This is where we are employed. And where we are employed, there's things, of course, that come into play, right? There's remuneration. And we needed to think, how are we going to remunerate our teams? And it's not necessarily in money, but there's many ways that people can be remunerated. And we cannot even just say to people, the blood of Christ remunerates you. Yes, that one is one most important, but there's other ways that we need to start remunerating ourselves psychologically, and in instances where it's possible, physically, so that by so doing, people can be encouraged, people can be engaged, people can be challenged to do more or to do better. So we came up with these 3 E's, we call them, and we said we wanted in our year 2019, we wanted to build a youth in our church that was enabled, that was engaged, and that was enterprised. And I'm going to speak about what it meant, or what did we have to do at the bottom. And I'm going to ask that you stay with me at least while we're still on the theme. So we spoke around the 3 E's. And we said, if at all, we are not going to be relevant just because, there's many youths that have been there in our church. I wouldn't necessarily want to tell my age, but I've been a youth for quite a long time. And maybe even when I was young in Pathfinder, I started getting involved in some of the youth initiatives. So I was quite engaged in the church. But over time, some of these things, because we are seeking relevance, they become very generic, right? You just come to church and you participate in the activities, in the lesson study, and you go home. There was no impact. I could not feel the impact that I was looking for, right? Which is what we said. So we need to start thinking then a bit harder or a bit different about how we are going to make sure that our youths are kept in the church. They're going to remain in the church. But in the church, what do we want them? What are the 3 things that we want to be like the key themes that we're going to chase. The first was enablement, the second being engaged, the third one being enterprised. So maybe just to touch on engage or on being enabled. So we said we want to intentionally and deliberately build skills or empower our youth. So the enable, the first E, was around basically empowerment, to say we need to give people the skills, the tools, so that they feel somewhat relevant, right? But so that they can be impactful where they are. So we need to give them the skills, not so that they are relevant only, but so that they can be impactful, right? We said we want a youth that is engaged, meaning we don't want a youth that just comes to church, because guys, to be quite honest, if people just come to church for the sake of coming to church, over time they will lapse, right? Ellen White says in Steps to Christ, those who continue to pray, it's on the privilege of prayer. It says something like, I might be paraphrasing it. It says, those who continue to pray and do nothing will soon cease to pray. So meaning even prayer itself, it has to be coupled with engagement. There has to be something that happens post-prayer, right? There has to be some activity that needs to happen. So we said we want to enable our youth, we want to empower them, we want to give them skill, but we said we also want to keep them engaged. And what does engage mean? In our minds, we're already thinking, when the church starts to think about nominating staff, or rather nominating officers in the church needs to be able to see youth with skill. So that's where these two connect, to say when people are enabled, they can become engaged. So if we are going to get youth, a youth in our church that can become deacons, that can hold a Bible study, an effective Bible study, there has to be some enablement or some empowerment that needs to happen. And there has to be some engaging, or at least there should be opportunities for them to start engaging or to start participating in the church's activities. But we thought these two are not enough, because these two, if they are not met with also being enterprised, they also limit us in our ability to be impactful. Yes, it's important to give people skills. Yes, it's important to keep people engaged and participating. But if we don't start being deliberate around creating employment or creating work opportunities for our fellow youth, we are failing them. And ultimately, these guys are going to end up looking for work in places where they should not be working, or they're going to start looking for work that is going to impact their spirituality. They cannot, get time to come to church and in any case, if our youths are not enterprised, if they're not skilled, if they're not upskilled, they will not be able to make the financial commitments. They'll not be able to return tithe. So even a lesson around tithing, when we've not created opportunities for people to have an income, is not enough. Right? Stewardship, when we speak, we always speak high level. We say stewardship is when God has given you a place to manage. But God has also given us duty and responsibility to create opportunities for our fellow youths. And I'm going to share about what we started to do in order to be impactful. And there's two things that these things started to achieve, guys, when we started working on them. One, they started to have an impact on us. And I think that's the most important piece for me, which is why having an impact mindset is more important than just being relevant and being accepted in our different spaces, right? So we started to think about what do we do? How do we make it practical to create opportunities for work? Look at the small business that I was involved with, or at least that I had, I could not create employment for everyone, but we needed to start thinking, if we're going to be impactful in other people and also in our lives, if we're going to become impactful, we need to start thinking, how can we keep people enabled? How can we engage them? How can we keep them enterprised? And guys, I think the importance around me saying these things and maybe giving you what our mantra was, what is it that we wanted to achieve, is to say we need to start thinking like organizations. It's not, look, God does not bring us together for just purposes of fellowshipping and eating nice food and maybe just doing door-to-door and evangelizing. We need to start thinking outside the box about what does it mean. And I'm going to share when I speak later, I think in the next slide, I'm going to speak about if we get this concept right, if we get the concept of building the mindset around being impactful, if we get it right, you start to see how even the initiatives or the activities in the church actually build into what we want to achieve ultimately, right? And like I said, even though the intention was to impact the community and the society where we are, we started to realize that these things were actually impacting us more. They were starting to impact or add value in us more than, I think to an extent, more than they were having in other people. And I'm going to share what we started to do for us to be able to build that and act in a way that was impactful. So I've just given you 4 things that, based on these 3 that I mentioned, 4 things that I said that we said, okay, fine, this is going to be our focus. This is what we're going to do for us to become impactful. So the first one, and the initial one, and I alluded to this last week as well, to say I think the important piece for us was to create a database. And maybe not just create a database. I don't want us to think, because creating a database is a bit forward thinking. Rather, we started to collect data or to collect information, right? So we said, we want to know who our youths are. What is it that they do? As in, what are the skills that they have, right? Why do they come to church? What makes them come to church, right? When are they engaged? When they come to church, when are they engaged? And when they are not in church, what are they doing? So we started to become a bit interested in not just the youth when they are in church, but we became interested in who they are, what they do, why they come to church, what do they do when they are outside, right? And also we wanted to understand what are the things that keep them engaged. So you almost look at the 3 E's that I mentioned to sort of, we wanted to categorize and try to understand what are the skills that they have, what keeps them engaged, and economically, what is it that they do for a living. And then we also started to look at also skills. So we created a database, and believe it or not, we found, we did not know at the time, that we actually had about 78 youths in our church, right? Look, we had youth, people that were coming to church. But when we started to speak about this and we started to share what we wanted to accomplish, people started to come. And ultimately, we had about 78 or just over, between 78 and 100 youths. I don't have the actual number because, I mean, some of the numbers fluctuated, right? And we collected the database, but we just did not want to get name, surname, phone number. But we started to ask interesting things like, what's the person's occupation? What's their highest qualification, right? Or what are their skills? What is it that they can do? Why was this important? It was going to be important because if we do not know what our youths are capable of, we will not be able to have an impact in society. And sometimes as a church, we limit ourselves to just distributing steps to Christ in the different communities where we are, right? When we actually need to understand what are the skills that our youths have, or what are the skills that the church has that we can start using today to empower the community where we are. Because ultimately, if we don't do those things, we will not become as impactful as we would want to be, right? So we identified the skills. And then what this actually started to do, guys, we started to see that, in fact, we actually had a huge population of our youths who are not employed, right? So we started to understand that by just collecting information, look, we're not even moved to the next step. We just collected data, we collected information. We started to understand, some of our youths don't have work. Some of our youths actually have small businesses, right? We actually started to understand, some of our youths have these natural skills, they have these talents because of the data that we collected, right? And then we try to collaborate and understand, there's bureaucracy sometimes in church and it's difficult to do some of those things. But one thing that I just noted on the presentation there was, we started to find opportunities and deliberately so try to engage AMM, Adventist Men Ministries, Adventist Women's Ministries, to understand, so who are the leaders or the elders or the elderly in our church, and what skills do they have? And the importance for us for doing this was to say, so if there's youths in our church who are not employed, but they have time to build skills, we can sort of collaborate or link them up with an elderly person to assist them. So things that we started, or at least some of the data we knew, but we had not proactively collected it for a purpose, right? So we started to, we knew that some of our elderly people at church, they do some alarms, some of them fix televisions. Some of them, they run their own businesses, right? So we started to ask them, can we pair you with one of our youths, right? Some of them are in plumbing. So we said, can we take you, Mr. Smith, and tie you up with Mr. Nqaba, for example, who's looking for work, who doesn't have nothing to do. On a Sunday, when you do your free work, it doesn't have to be in your formal job. But can we just pay you up with this person so that you can start teaching them skills, right? Don't worry about paying them. We don't want you to pay them. And I'm going to make a comment around financial commitment at the end. But we said, don't worry about making any payments to these people. It was just about skills transfer. Like I said, there's bureaucracy in the church. Sometimes you need to be a bit smarter around how you do this. We did not manage this to accomplish in the year. And I'm going to speak about succession in the slide that is going to follow. But for us, that became very important because we were able, for the first time, to start showing our youths that our interest in you is not just around your ability to recite Daniel, the book of Daniel, to understand the 2,300 days. We say, on top of the 2,300 days, we want you to be able to generate an income for yourself. And when we can get our youths, when we can get our young people to be that involved and that engaged in the church, economically, that means these people will start bringing sort of, what they accumulate or what they get. They start bringing money into the church because these are the people that are going to support the ministries that we want to do, right? But I think apart from that, these people, because of the impact that would have had on them, that mindset is going to be carried further. They are going to have that same level of impact as well with their fellow youths or other people that they would interact with. So collecting data or creating a database became very important to us. We still have that database today. And I just want to encourage you, if you have not started, start collecting information. Information is very important because it influences or it impacts the decisions and the choices that we need to make or the decisions that we are supposed to make, right? So the second piece that we started doing was around focus groups. So because we found that our youths, you're speaking about over 80 people, right? It's difficult to manage 80 people. It's very difficult to manage 80 people. So we thought for us to be able to have an impact together as a collective, and also have an impact in our individual spaces, it's important that we break ourselves up into smaller groups. We call them focus groups, right? And I'll speak maybe a bit more as well as we go in the presentation. But we broke our club from a club of 80, and we broke them up into smaller groups of between 5 and 6 people. And so the idea, like I've said, it was just so that we can have impact. But because we were so obsessed about being engaged, right? We noticed that, and I'm sure you'd have noticed this, if a church or if there's a huge group of people, there's usually a few people that become engaged or participative. There's only a few people that participate. So we wanted to make sure that we get as much participation as possible. So we broke the club into smaller groups of between 5 and 6. So what we started to realize is, and look, these are not new concepts, guys. If you really think about it, the idea of cell groups in the church is around creating smaller groups so that we can have a bit more impact in the communities and our families. You only are able to do that when you are a small group. Big ships that have a gazillion people don't work anymore. If you want to, to be quite honest, think about the organizations that you work for, the companies that you work for. They don't, even if a company is 10,000 people, 1,000 people, you are a part of a team of only 5 to 8 people. That's how things work, right? So even in the corporate space, the idea of building focus groups is there. So this wasn't a new concept. It wasn't something, but we are not deliberate enough to implement some of those things in our small departments, even or especially as the youth, because like I've said, I'd been in the youth ministries for quite a while, but I still saw that there were a lot of gaps. There were a lot of things that we could have achieved or things that we could accomplish, but it was very difficult when the group is big. So because of the data that we had collected and the information that we had collected, we started to deliberately break people up into smaller groups. based on the skills, based on the capabilities that they have. So you start to find the people who are a bit uncomfortable to speak in a larger group, they became a bit more vocal. Now they had confidence all of a sudden to start engaging and being open, simply because the space is smaller, the group is smaller, right? And there's people that they could associate with easily. And we try to sort of mix up the skills, right? Or the skills gap, so that there is a bit of it closes the gaps. So we don't necessarily mix people who are only thinkers, right? You'd mix up a person who's showing some bit of leadership qualities, or a person who is strong, at least as far as spirituality is concerned. So we try to group them up in that kind of fashion. And even when we grouped them, we sort of chose a team leader, we chose a treasurer person, we chose sort of a deputy chaplain, right? So they were reporting to the chaplain of the club, and these things really kept us excited. We were quite happy. We really were engaged in the ministry, because what it started to do as well, we started to develop sort of sub-units of leadership, or pockets of leadership, right? So you can imagine, if there is 40 people, for argument's sake, if you break them up into 5 and you have 8 team leaders, it means you literally have 8 people that can easily become the youth leader for the next year, right? So we started to use those small groups to sort of start developing skill and to start building skill. And we gave them targets like, simple things as, you need to make sure that your small group has devotion every day. So it doesn't matter how they do devotion, when they do it. The idea is their chaplain or their deputy chaplain in that small group is only accountable for the 5 people. They need to make sure that there are 5 people. So it's not me trying to get 70 people participating, but it's the one person trying to get 5 people participating. When there's activities in the church, we got those few people to be the ones who drive these activities, right? And the great thing, what we started to notice as well, what we started to enjoy, was the fact that they started to enable themselves amongst themselves. So they would share skills, they would share information and share some data, and they started to support each other in their different spaces. So it was team enablement. But the bigger thing, which is also another important one, is we started to see collaboration happening within the team of 5 to 6, or amongst the teams, right? So this team would say with this team, guys, we want you to come and assist us in completing this kind of project. So we started to see collaboration and innovation as well coming up, which was quite exciting. And guys, I cannot tell you, even today, right? I now live some 400 km from Joburg, and we visited our local youth, and I sent an invite to them. I don't know if some of them are on the call, but So we went there, over the weekend, and yesterday's lockdown, I'd gone for classes. And then while I was there, they sort of had an event, and we attended the event with my wife. And when we were there, things I started to realize, so people continue to engage you. I still had some of the youth that came and started to tell me about their business ideas. No, this is what we're trying to do. This is what, simply because of the things that we started back then. And if we're going to be intentional enough, guys, and start institutionalizing some of these things, we'll start to see them having a ripple effect even in the future, to the point that I made last week, right? And you start to realize that when you start doing that as well, issues like unemployment can start being closed. For example, you'll find that in your youth, there's about 3 to 5 people with complementary qualifications, right? The one has done a BCom in marketing, the other one has done business management, the other one has done agriculture or something like that. So instead of these 5 people looking for work in different places, these 5 people can actually say, okay, let's look at our skills, right? And let's look at where our skills sort of intersect to identify what problem we can solve in society. So even that small space in their focus group, there's an opportunity for them to start creating work opportunities for themselves, right? Moving on to the next button here. We then said, in fact, we were quite deliberate with our focus groups. We said there's 2 things. We're giving you 2 targets or 2 initiatives, 2 things that we want you to accomplish. 1, we want you to come up with a community-based project. Number 2, we want you to come with a spiritual-based project. And we were trying to move away from the youth only being a group of people that go to a camp, that have outing and they go hiking, and then that's it. We wanted to also strike a balance to say, for you to be able to have an impact within and within yourselves, there has to be a spiritual activity or a spiritual based activity that you will do. And the other one has to be a community based project. And here are the two things, or maybe let me start with the community-based project, the different initiatives that we spoke about. We spoke about street cleaning. We said, guys, we cannot have a church building in a street that is very dirty. We cannot, as young people, worship in a street that is dirty. And we come on Sabbath and we go away and we still leave the streets the same as they are. If we are going to build a mindset around impact, we need to start changing the looks and the things that are happening around us. And guys, we started to do street cleaning. We were thinking about starting some entrepreneurial seminars, right? And when we were doing this, we were sincere in doing it. It was not about, we were not doing street cleaning so that we can baptize people. No, we were not doing entrepreneurial seminars so that we can invite people to a crusade. That wasn't the idea, but there had to be a link between that initiative and how it's going to impact people also in a spiritual sense. So we thought, look, so the place where our church is, there is like a number of flats and there's lots of young people that sit there. We realized that if we are going to go to the youths in our area and say, come to a crusade, they will not come. So those kind of strategies don't work anymore, but we need to start adding value. And the easiest way or the gateway is for us to start by, coming up with this community-based project. So a simple one, like street cleaning. We said every Sunday, we're going to come, we're going to collect, just pick up papers and some rubbish and put it, in South Africa, there's a company, at least, government, the company that goes around and picks up garbage. And over time, if we can do it successfully for 2 months, on the third month, we can start inviting the youth in our area, right? To say to them, guys, we don't even live here. We are just adding value. We just want to keep the street clean. Can you start assist us in doing so? And the intention is just to keep the street clean, so that even one day when the church moves, right, people can feel that there used to be people that used to keep this place clean. It cannot be, and the objective cannot always be because we want to evangelize, or rather we want to baptize people. And we start living in some of those things. I mean, simple things. I mean, you have your what you call your health expos, right, in the different malls or in the different areas. Those are good, but the target, especially if you are doing it in the premise of being impactful, the target cannot be to baptize people when they come to your health expo. People will stop coming, right? So you need to have these initiatives or these projects just for the purposes of adding value to society, right? And in so doing, you will start to gain people's trust, you start to engage, you start becoming known, right? People start valuing you. And it's easy then to then start saying, guys, what makes me do this, what makes me want to impact my community this way is because of my spiritual belief. Then people are going to start buying in. So we wanted to start street cleaning. We thought of building, I mean, where our church is, there is like a school, and the school is right across a supermarket, but there's 3 supermarkets in our area. So the thought was, if we can negotiate with the school and maybe ask if we can grow cucumber, for example, in their yard, in a space in their yard, and whatever produce that we make, we supply it to the supermarket that is across the road, we would have created an employment, guys. And in so doing, we would have created an opportunity for us to be known and to be visible in the space where we are. So we started to think a bit hard about how can we make an impact. And I mean, our youth started to come with different ideas, having like entrepreneurial seminars, just a seminar around how to start a business, a seminar around financial management, a seminar around budgeting, right? It's simple things, but they have a lot of impact. And it's things that in normal circumstances, the church does not teach some of those things, right? So for us, in order to have value or an impact in the community or in the society, we thought maybe we could start this entrepreneurial seminars, and we can have more and more, and we can start bringing even the spiritual principles that are found there, spiritual principles around the health message, etc., etc., but at least would have been an impact. And then the last piece, I'm just weary of time. The last piece was around just spiritual development, and I've already alluded to this, to say we wanted them to make sure that in their small focus groups, they have devotion on a daily basis, and we made it a mandate for them to do so. Church office wanted them to be engaged in the church and to participate in the church, and I'm glad to say, I don't know if it was out of the initiatives that we did, but I think for the first time this year at our church, more youths were elected to church office. I mean, we had the two of our young youths in elder positions. In fact, we actually had three, and one had to travel and move to Zimbabwe, so they could not be part. But it made us excited because it meant that we were starting to see the results of some of the work that we were doing, right? And even in the newsletters that Tony is going to share with you, you will see how some of these things came through. And around financial commitment, it was easier to collect money from 5 people than it is to collect from 70. And if we can do it successfully with 5 people, it means we ultimately got the finances from 70. And these small monies are the ones that would start. We were not able to get to that point, at least. This finances that we started to collect are the ones that will start financing these youth that you collaborate, right? To say, so if you're going to go with Mr. Ndlovu to go and do work at a different place, here is 50 rands because you've done something. So the monies that we would be collecting, they can start supporting the initiatives, the community-based initiatives, right? They're the ones that buy you tools for you to have those community projects, buy you seeds. These small monies that you collect are the ones that are going to sort of become a stipend. I mean, if you can give Nqaba 100 rands to go and learn how to become a plumber, it's good until he gets to a point where he can start generating an income. So this is what we wanted to accomplish. Unfortunately, you know, some of the things we were not able to do because of the time that we had. And this year we went into lockdown and things became a bit more complex or difficult for us to do. Right, but that is what we started to do to try and become impactful. So I've just created also just this one slide, and it's actually my last slide, and I'm not going to take much time as I did on the previous one, to say then how do you start developing a mindset of having an impact? How do you start driving that, right? So the first one, we said purpose is very important. Purpose is very important, and we need to start investing time in understanding what our purpose is. And I know in the previous presentations that I've been shared with you, purpose has been a big issue. And I mean, even if you go to the Bible, God is very intentional about purpose, right? You know, when he calls people, he calls them for a specific purpose. And I think if we need to start investing in getting our youths and our young people to start thinking, what really is my purpose? Why am I here? Why do I exist? And what's my responsibility? How am I going to have an impact in my lifetime? So investing in understanding your purpose is very important, right? And not just individual purpose, but I think corporate purpose. Look, we find our purpose in our Great Commission, right? Go ye therefore, baptize, teach and baptize, you know, in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. Yes, that's a corporate purpose. That is why we exist. But I think when we start to become intentional and when we start to think about it in terms of being impactful, or at least developing that impactful mindset, we start defining our purpose, or rather we continue to develop our purpose based on also what is happening around us. To say, as a church, our purpose maybe is not just to, and I'm speaking corporate purpose, our purpose maybe is not just to have a place for worship here in our suburb, right? But maybe it might be our purpose is to deal with prostitution that is in this community, or just basically gender-based violence in this community where we exist. So we become a bit more intentional. We start to think differently around what our corporate purpose is. And that being coupled with the gospel is what is going to have the most impact. So it's important that firstly, we strike a balance, but it's important to understand what our purpose is as a corporate and also individually. The second piece is the learning culture and investing in information. And I think this one is a very important one, guys. I cannot overemphasize the importance of continually learning. We need to continue to learn. And I think having a learning mindset is having a mindset that is serious about being impactful, right? And when you start to build, I mean, when you start to think around learning in terms of so that you can have an impact, or so that learning can have an impact on you, your attitude towards the reading becomes different, or your attitude towards information becomes reading. And I want to make an example, guys, around this. And I was speaking to my wife around this, and I was saying to her, you know, how we have socialized reading limits us greatly, because it makes us not draw the benefits as much as possible from even the stuff that we read. And I remember this I mentioned sometime, and I'm going to come back to the point that I was just illustrating. So God understands the impact of reading. This is why God designed the Bible, right? This is why he wrote the Bible for us, or gave us the Bible, because God understands that by reading has the potential or the power to change one's mindset or change one's attitude. And it also has the power to also change how a person will have an impact to others. So God understands that the Bible itself has immense impact. It has a potential to change a person, right, in their attitude. So if God values reading so much, because if that wasn't the case, God would have, made us. If that was the case, if God wasn't interested in reading, he would have given us the Bible in a different form. Maybe it would have been audio. You go to sleep, and there are people still getting visions. But understanding the time that we were living in, God saw the value and the impact of reading or of books. This is why the Bible is in written form. And if God's wisdom is like that, how much more interest or how much more are we investing in reading? And the point that I was making to my wife is, we need to, even in how we read, start being deliberate, or start to think of it even a bit more deeper. I mean, when we were talking about Joseph, right? And I was saying to her, the Bible does not really go into detail around what happened to Joseph when he was appointed to become the governor in Egypt. The Bible doesn't tell you that that role needed him to have a degree. We don't hear those things, right? It doesn't tell us whether or not he got some training, whether or not he got mentorship. The Bible does not tell us all of that detail. But when you start to read with the intention of being impactful, you start to ask yourself those kind of questions when you read the Bible. So you start noticing things. I was reading, we are reading the Old Testament, and I picked up that the Bible is quite deliberate when it speaks about when they were building the temple, It mentions two names, and every time these names are mentioned, I think it's mentioned about twice or three times, it keeps saying they were men of skill. So, you start to notice these kind of things, to say even the Bible is intentional about showing you that these people had skill and what the role of skills was in that time. So it says everyone was involved. Everyone was participating in the building of the sanctuary, but two people, two men, because of their skill, they are mentioned by name. And you start to realize these things as you go. And when you are intentional about being impactful, you start to ask yourself, deliberate questions. Think about Joseph when he received the court, right? And you're told that his brothers were jealous. What does jealous mean in practical terms, right? Because when you start to think in those terms, you will start to realize even errors in your language around how you speak when someone receives something that is good or someone gets recognized. So it's important that we become intentional about learning and about developing ourselves. So stories, right? Even around, the Bible itself. The Bible is written in stories, and we take for granted the impact of stories, which is why I thought it might be necessary for me to tell you our story last year. Instead of just, speaking almost on a high level, philosophical level, let me rather go and be practical. The Bible, God understands the power of stories, because stories can help you to find principles on how to live. And therefore, even when you start to read the Bible, you start to look for leadership lessons that you can find from the Bible. You start to look things around culture, to say, what about culture? What is the culture? How do we show up as young people in the church and also in the community? You start to find those lessons even in the literature that you're reading. So we need to start investing in developing and in reading. We need to start investing in reading and developing ourselves. And also, even when we read stories or when we read the Bible, start questioning and asking ourselves, what is the impact? Why did God place the story in the Bible? and what is the impact that it's supposed to have on me? And when I've read it, how am I going to have an impact in other people, right? And the third piece in developing an impact mindset is around collaboration. And collaboration is very important. Team, you will realize that even in the corporate, collaborating is a big thing. Building collaboration or building teams is very important. And I've shared practically what we did, building those focus groups, right? But I think collaboration also is a mature way of actually realizing that you cannot have all the skills. You don't have all the skills, right? And where I'm lacking, someone else must come and close those gaps. So it makes me intentional about the associations I make, the friends that I make, the people that I keep in my network, because I need to be deliberate. If I'm going to have an impact in another person, I cannot have a person who's like me next to me, because we're not going to add value. And like me, I'm not saying who's Christian, I must get a person who's not Christian. It is a person who's Christian, but the skills that we have are not the same. They cannot be the same. So I need to find ways that I can complement them so that I can have an impact on them. And in a similar manner, what is it that I don't have that they can start closing a gap with me? So collaboration becomes a very important piece for us to be able to do it. And then the last one, which is my last point in closing, is just around documenting things. So last year, at the end of the year, there was something major that was happening in my personal life. So it became very difficult to sort of close the year properly. And it goes to this point. And I think it is around just documenting things. Documenting is very important. We were not so successful in documenting, or at least putting together the process, because what I was obsessed about, or what I was obsessing with my team, was we need to put a structure so that even if there is a youth manual and there is a church manual, there should be a model that speaks specifically to our local church that we can also carry over to say, in the first year, this is what we have accomplished. In the second year, this is what we are going to accomplish. In the third year, this is what we're going to accomplish. And if we are successful around building those focus groups with those team leaders, right, it means even the people that will get appointed to the next one to become the youth in the next year, they don't come and wipe everything that is there. There is a blueprint that we are using so that we can literally move our youths from one level to the other. And we found that documenting and institutionalizing our initiatives and our activities is very important. And I'll even challenge you. I mean, simple things as this Zoom session, we need to document those things, right? And our speakers who come to the sessions, if we can ask them, can you give us a presentation? It's important in institutionalizing and in documenting these things, because we will know not to repeat the same thing in the future, right? Because otherwise, when the year starts, we go back and we continue with a cycle. We cannot teach Daniel 12 every year. We need to move to in the next year and say, how can we continue to, how does that translate to practical terms, and how can we impact the society where we are? So we need to move from one step to the other. And I honestly got tired of being, repeating the same thing year on year. You go to camp, you come back, you have GYD, you come back. We need to start moving from one level to the other, and we need to start growing. And that is only possible if in our minds we think in terms of being impactful, not just being relevant. So, Tim, I thought maybe I would just share these few insights and these few thoughts, just to get a bit of, share a bit of insights around what it means for us to move from just being relevant as young people and maybe move to being a bit more impactful to ourselves and also to others. I did say that there is a newsletter that we put together. This was our newsletter, and it recorded, it just documented the initiatives that we did. I don't mind sharing this. This is my younger me. I don't mind sharing this with you, because that's the purpose, right? But at least I have something to fall back. I can look back and say I have this. And if you really start to think about it, guys, even in the workplace, right? In the workplace, they are looking today not just on qualifications. Qualifications are still important, but they are looking at skill set. What are the skills that you have? I don't mind putting this on my LinkedIn or on my CV and say, I'm able to design a newsletter, for example, because these are design skills. And it's important when you start working in an organization. And that was our focus, right? To say, when we start to build these skills locally in the church, we can start developing and building people's CVs, for example, because of the initiatives that they are doing. The people who are collecting finances, who are treasurers in their small groups, right? They can themselves start writing that they've collected finances, because when they start looking for work, the employer is looking for experience. You can start using this as experience. I mean, if you have been going to church since you were 15 and you are looking for work when you are 25, you have 10 years where you have been literally active in managing finances, in coordinating people. So that piece also becomes important, because you can start using it for work purposes or for finding work. So this was our newsletter. We managed to document, or at least produce 2 newsletters, and we just captured some of our activities. This is when we did hospital visit. This was at a camp that we attended. This is when we did hospital visit. This was our GYD program. This is when we did prison ministries. And even in prison ministries, we started to think, how can we do prison ministries differently? And we thought maybe what might work is we can take one person from the community, even from another church, and say, go to prison for service for us. And you can start even thinking about young people who are becoming mischievous. Put them in these initiatives, take them to the prison. It's not so that you can go and evangelize, because even when you go to prison, you find there is a youth, there's an Adventist church in the prison itself. So who's teaching who? But if you can take a person whom you can have an impact on in the society, whom you can take and they get to experience church in a different setting, then you'd have had an impact. This was, one of the small focus groups. This young man here is now an elder at our church, and I'm happy to say that. But we went to a local park. These are 4 young people, or at least 5 with the cameraman, and we said we're going to sort of have a worship service at the park, and we invited the person that we saw there, and that's just how it carried out, or what happened. But here is our theme. It became something that was live, that was in front of us all the time. We said we want a youth that is enabled, that is engaged, that is enterprise. People were able to see this in front of them. This was us cleaning the street, right? Look how happy our friends were, right? Our youth, they were kind of excited to go and clean the street. Things that we take for granted, but they have a lot of impact. And you'll be able to maybe go through some of the content and some of the detail on this newsletter afterwards. So thank you so much, guys. It was nice to be with you. I really enjoyed sharing this detail and sharing this information with you. And we'll give it back to you then, Timothy, for further questions or engagements. And then we can start sharing around how we can continue to support each other further from this. But thank you, and may God bless you.
Just a minute. Let's give somebody else to take up in place of Timothy.
Okay. So I think we're also quite
everybody.
Open. Yes, Sir Kev, go for it. Sorry.
No, it's okay. You can just share your thought before I come in.
No, I was going to say, while we wait, maybe you can share your comments or questions. So giving it back to you, Sir Kev.
Okay, sure. That is fine. Thank you so much. I wish I could be able to pronounce your name as it's supposed to be pronounced, but you can pardon me for that. I will do more practice so that next time I'll be able to bring it out as it is supposed to be.
No problem, sir.
It has been a pleasure having you, and I think this session for today has been very practical, given that you've crowned it with what you've done as a people down there in the South. And I think it is a challenge to us. 2 things that you said that really I found very fascinating is that whenever you want to start something, especially when as an entrepreneur, when you want to start something in terms of a business, it is all about problem solving. So for you to be able to go far, you have to identify that problem, that gap that you want to fill in society, in the community. It is not just about starting a business to be able to make money. It is not sustainable that way. So you have to identify the gap, you have to identify the problem that you want to solve, then offer that solution. And I also can't underscore the importance of teamwork, especially the collaborative teamwork that you've been speaking about. When people come together, really great things happen, rather than when somebody is trying to make it happen on their own. Like, for example, when you are the youth director, that is last year, you can confess that it did not take your own effort. Besides God guiding you through, it took a lot of teamwork for you people to be able to achieve that which you are able to achieve. So teamwork, it's very key in any kind of mission, in any kind of undertaking that or somebody wants to take. So those are the things that I was able to really clearly pick up. And I want to once again thank you so much for that. And today's apparently we are very few of us, but I want to open the floor for our friends who want to say something. You have a question, you want to seek clarification, this is the time. So feel free to unmute. And yes, Nathi Lifa, I can see your hand is up. Take it away.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you.
Can you hear me? Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for inviting me to the discussion. Yeah, I would like to say impact is very important in terms of, almost every part of life. You need to consider the impact that life. Okay, so just like what you said, like the speaker, most businesses they fail because the entrepreneurial mindset, because you think about the profit and the money and not the impact that your business plan is going to have in the community and even in the country as a whole. Like, look at like impact lifestyles right now. So it's not always think about the profit or the monetary aspect of your business, but more of the that is it's going to have on the lifestyles of people in the community, and even the way you live your life itself. It's supposed to have impact on your neighbor or friends or everyone collaborating. Your life is supposed to have a positive impact on them. So I just want to highlight the importance of impact. Just like what Nqaba said, it's not relevant. It's not really relevant. It's about the impact that you are supposed to emit. Okay, so I'd also like to highlight that you don't need to be a millionaire to have a big impact in the society and in the country. You don't need to be, you don't need to have a job to have an impact. Small things like cleaning, being in groups, collaborating with people, it can make a very big difference. So I think the problem that we have now, it's our mindsets. It's like we're all lost. People have different mindsets of, it's like, I think it's because of how the society has wired our brains, because if you look at places like, especially, in town and also other low profile, suburbs, that dirty. It's not because of the government. It's not because the government doesn't have enough money. It's because of the mindset of the people that stay in that area. Even the school that the last high school that I went to, you know, it was the walls, they were dirty. It was, you know, it was an underrated, you know, schools. You know, those kind of schools that, you know, a lot of kids that don't want to go. You know, you only go there when you failed. And I started to realize now that the school wasn't the problem. In fact, it was the best school that I've ever went to. It was like the largest school in the city. It was because of the mindset of the kids that were there. You know, when you enter the gates of the school and you have that mindset, you know, that, I'm here because I'm a failure, you know, the school is not for me. You know, the school is going to, that area you're going into, it's going to continuously, a very long with the mindset that to more and more dirty, you know. So even people who know what's supposed to be done, I think we also have a problem that you're taking any action, you know. And I think that's the problem that I have. A lot of ideas. I love collaborating with a lot of people. You know, so you know, I always come up with ideas on how, you know, the world can change, and also the country can change itself. But I'm not taking any action towards it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You somehow, you know, right. We're still wrong because our discussions, they don't have any physical impact or changeable impact. So I hope that you know, whoever we collaborate with, those ideas are supposed to be turned into reality, and you know, they're supposed to be, you know, physical, changeable impact towards the country and just the society. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Nati. And I think you make very important points, right? Firstly, around so it's not money that you have, and I think, you know, when you start to work on an impactful mindset, if your mind is around creating impact, you start to realize that, in fact, the things that God gave you, skills, family, friends, all of those things that are around you are actually enough for you to have an impact. You stop looking for things in the exterior. You start working with what you have internally and around you to start making use of it. And I wanted to also just share, I don't know, Nati, if you know, one of the most impactful people in Kenya, and guys, I don't know if you also know, it's a lady called Wangari Maathai. I don't know if you know her. If you do not, she started the Green Belt movement. And at one point, or at least when they started, the intention was to build, or rather to plant 1 million trees in Kenya. Or I don't know, maybe it was for Africa. But she's known as the most impactful, one of the most impactful people in Kenya for just planting trees. You don't need English, you don't need fancy language, you just need a willing heart. And the level of impact that planting 1 million trees has is just phenomenal. So we don't need to think outside the box, guys. We need to start thinking about, where do we find gaps in our different spaces? And then we are able to try and close those gaps. So thank you, Nati, for those points. And also maybe just double clicking around identifying the gap, which is what Sir Kev mentioned, but also the importance of teamwork. So thank you so much for those contributions. Sir Kev, I'll give it back to you. I don't see any questions in the chat. But if there's any, I'm also happy to engage.
Thank you. I also want to reiterate something that you said about learning. You see, as a human being, the moment you stop learning, that is when you die.
Yeah.
So that is how important learning is. So that is to say that in whatever sphere of life you are at, you need to keep on learning. Do not enclose yourself from learning, acquiring new knowledge, getting to know other things. You see, there are people who enclose themselves to simply what their professional environment provides.
Yeah.
But I think that is so limiting. So we need to open up, and especially reading keeps somebody refreshed all the time. When you can just anything that you land your hands on, be it a magazine, be it a newspaper, just keep on reading. You will continue acquiring new knowledge that at the end of the day will prove to be priceless.
Absolutely.
So I don't know whether somebody else has a comment. Benjamin, you want to say something?
No, thank you. I think one of the most outstanding thing is for me is the organization, because in most of what Nqaba has shared is what happens in real enterprise. But the way he has simplified it and brought it into church level, there are things I've never thought about them from that perspective. To me, it was more of an eye opener that I can actually go for these at a church level, because I've worked with the institution, and often for me, whatever I do, I always think of, is this institution, is it having impact in the country? What is the level of its impact? That determines whether I move to that institution or not. But I've never looked at it at a lower level, that this can actually boil down to the church. Because wherever I work, I head IT and I have a team of guys whom we work with, and I always try to structure the IT such that it has an impact to the organization. But I've never thought to bring the same concept into the church. So for me, it was a eye opener, and I thank you so much for the sharing. Thank you so much.
Oh,
thank you for that,
thank
Benjamin.
You so much, thank you, sir.
Thank you. Michelle, you want to say something?
I'd like to say thank you for everyone who organized the session, and to the presenter. I think for me, the points that were magnified were around acquiring information, learning, reading, and using all of that to then identify where to then exert impact, and to just realize that it's not enough for us to just wake up and go to work and come back home. There's more to be done. There's people who need assistance out in the world, in our communities, even in our families closest to us. What impact are we exerting to them? And I think for me, it has been an eye-opener to ask myself that question, to say, what difference am I making in my space, in my corner? And what can I start to do now? And like Nati said, that we think about these things, but we never take action. So I think it is high time that we start to act on those things that we would have identified we can do, and start now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michelle, for that. I also want to remind you that we have a WhatsApp group for MASOL, whereby we share real-time updates. For the past 2 days, we've been having a very heated discussion around what happened in our church here in Kenya. There were some not so good scandals, so people have been really up to it, trying to break it down. And so it has been very interesting, and I want to urge you that if you could like to join us, so that we can keep the conversation going even when we are not on Zoom, you are so much welcome. I want to give it to Katsekera. I hope I have pronounced that name well, to also tell us something. And if he or she has nothing to say, to just say hi to us.
Yeah, good evening to you. Thank you for inviting me. All who are in the group we have shared. Yeah, it is a special privilege to be in the group with you. What impacted and you know what I took note of was what the Nqaba was talking about, where we should leave a footprint of what we have done in our communities, especially for those coming behind, after us, so that we are not just doing things for the sake of just doing anything, but just so that we leave a legacy behind us, and we are not repeating the same things over and over again. And at the same time, it actually helps us to look at ourselves and to see whether we really are having an impact, and whether what we are doing can be gainfully put into place again into the future. So it is quite important that we keep evidence of the things that we are doing, whether we are in the church or in our personal lives, so that we able to go back and use that as information into the future. So I found that very important, and something that we could implement in our different lives. And I thought that was quite powerful. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you, our sister, for that. My friend, I don't know whether up to that moment you want to chip in with something, maybe a reaction to what the audience has been saying.
Yeah, I think I'm actually learning from the audience as well, so quite grateful for that. I think maybe just for me, the closing comment or somewhat reaction to what has been shared is, I remember, someone said this to me one time. They said talk is cheap. It's not enough for us to just continue talking. I think we need to start doing something about it, which is why I said it's important for us to institutionalize some of those things, document some of them. And we need to start acknowledging that, the skills that we have, what we know, God gave it to us for a purpose, and we need to find where in the church can we add value from the skills that we have had, and to honestly treat the church like an organization. An organization needs money. There's no organization that can work without money or without capital or without finance. So where are we going to find those opportunities for us to somewhat not generate an income, but allow for money to be available? And like I said, we don't need to go far. We don't need to look for complicated things, guys. We already have the skills. God has already given us the skills. We just need to find where can I apply them the best. And I think more conversations can be had. I say, Kev, we can set up maybe more time, just not now, around maybe to speak about what does collaboration practically mean? What does it mean to collaborate? How can we collaborate as people in church? What does leadership mean? What kind of leadership do we need? And what are the things that a leader should? So it does not take away the process that the church goes through in nominating people. But when a person has been nominated, what must be put in place for us to be able to get them to succeed or enable the church to succeed? So, and we need to, I think the biggest point is we treat the church as though it is a formal organization, because it really is. And God is quite critical when you go back to the Bible around creating structure. The idea of 7 days in a week is structure. The idea of rest is about structure. Putting together a temple. Read about how he set up the church, the elders, the leaders, the judges, etc. All about is about structure. It's about organization. That's really what organization is all about. And I think when we start to think in those terms, we are really starting to think in the mindset or in the mind frame of being impactful. And truly, I believe only at that level, we are only going to see, the glory of God and the things that God wants to achieve for us. Otherwise, we will keep, shooting in the air, and we will not see God's power in our life. So I just want to challenge you to say, let's continue the conversation. Let it continue from just here, and let's start thinking in practical terms. What does it mean for me to do this tomorrow? In the day, the activities that I engage in, how impactful are they to me, and how am I impactful in what I'm doing? And I promise you, God is going to enable us to take the gospel further and Christ soon come back. But thank you so much. I appreciate the invite and the comments that came from the floor. May God bless you.
Thank you so much. This far, I want to welcome Tony on behalf of the Master leaders to just say a word and offer the vote of thanks. Then he will welcome you to just give us the closing word of prayer. I believe you've already offered yourself to be available for future discussions on to continue on this conversation. So let us look at how our schedule is. Then I believe we will give you more time to continue with this conversation. So thank you so much once again, Tony.
Thanks, Sakev. Nqaba, we just want to say thank you. It has been a powerful session today, and honestly, I don't know, those who did not make it today missed quite a bit, but we're hoping they'll catch up on Facebook and YouTube. And thank you also for giving us the go ahead to call you back. Thank you for that. We'll surely do that in the near future, God willing. For those who joined us today, may God bless you for doing so. The links to the Facebook and the YouTube recordings are in the chat. Please share them out so that others can be also edified by this. For those in the muscle group, I've already shared the documents that Nqaba was sharing today. You'll be able to find them in the WhatsApp group. I think that will end it for today. May God bless all of you. So I'll ask Nqaba to come in to give us a final word of prayer.
All right. Thank you so much, sir. Let us pray. Our Father in heaven, we thank you, Lord, for giving us this time this evening to come and engage more about what it means practically to move just from relevance to being impactful. And Jehovah, we believe that the insights that you gave us today, you gave them to us for a purpose. And we just pray that the Holy Spirit who was with us may continue to be with us and continue to challenge us and make us think a bit further and what it means practically for us to have an impact, so that we can interrogate the activities that we do and start to sift and choose to do that which we know is going to have more impact in the communities and in the people that you have placed us around. We thank you for the gift of technology and the fact that we can interact across countries, and the fact that the session is even available for people to join in later. We pray, Father, that you may direct your children even to this presentation, so those whom you seek to be impacted by this may receive that. I pray in a special way for the Minister of Muscle, that you may be with them and that you may bless them and increase their territory. I pray for our family, our friends who are here on the line as well, who joined us this evening, to say, God, may you make them impactful in their lives and in the things that they do. May they have an impact, not just within their families, but even in the society, in the community where you've placed them. In the workplace where they are, may they continue to rise up and be recognized, so that Christ can be seen in them and they too may be drawn to you. Be with us as we rest. And this is our humble prayer in the name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen. Thank you.
Till we meet again, may God keep you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Goodbye and have a good night.